Hi all, and thank you for the opportunity. Very pleased to be here to share with you today the ACDC story and why we're worth a close look with the opportunity for a re-rate. I hope you all agree that the name is a memorable one, and I hope you find the story is as well. The essential disclaimer. So I'm an engineer, not a geologist, so there'll be no forward-looking statements to be too outlandish. The strategy. So essentially, ACDC is completely connected to the energy transition, supplying materials for the efficient low carbon capture and storage of energy. We aren't the first ones trying to achieve these aims, of course. It's a massive opportunity for Australia. Our aim is to be the supplier of separated rare earth elements within Australia using innovative technology and using the mineral monazite as the byproduct from mineral sands mining. The time for Australia selling low value materials offshore is gone, and we're really excited to be playing our part. So why ACDC? So, as I mentioned, we've got that exposure to the energy transition. The markets, the governments are demanding this change and to remove that downstream processing onto Australian shores. We recently went through an IPO at Christmas time. We listed in January. We raised 8 million. We've just quarterly, we've still got 6 million left in the bank. We've been hitting our milestones for the last 6 months. We've just completed a large drilling program across our projects in Western Victoria. So I guess that's the resource sort of side of things, but that's giving us the resource monazite. We're also now progressing into our studies with the technology side of things. And obviously our key differentiator is this, the processing technology which will enable the sort of previously used technologies used in China and elsewhere to deploy in Australia and to ensure that they meet the environmental permitting hurdles and provide those efficiencies and returns for shareholders. So we've pulled together a strong board who have had a lot of exposure to rare earths projects around the world and the corporate success as well. So our capital structure. So this is a bit of an easy story to tell. Our market cap, we're at cash backing. I guess the key one is down on the bottom right there where we market against our peers. Obviously there are a few stages ahead of us, but that's the upside. So once we get through those hurdles and once we get our JORC resource coming out in the next few months, that's when really people can peg us against those other ones and benchmark us and then really see that opportunity. So rare earths, why do we need them? So essentially, I'm sure everyone's heard about the energy transition, the movement to electric vehicles, wind turbines. Essentially, it all comes down to permanent magnets. Magnets is really the key one to remind yourself of. And there's four sort of key elements that make up those magnet metals, and that's the praseodymium, dysprosium, terbium, and neodymium. And so as you can see, there's lots of projections out there that from now to 2030, you know, the car sales, EV car sales is going to double. So therefore, the demand for this NdPr is going to increase. So then to take a step back and look at the supply chain. So where is all this processing occurring at the moment? So the first pie chart there is the mining. So there's relatively good exposure across the world of rare earth mining, but then everyone gets that to a concentrate and then ships that offshore. And then every step else beyond that is, you know, greater than 85–90% done there. And obviously this last sort of COVID period and these last few years has really highlighted the fact that the reliance that we do have on the Chinese market and the desire by government around the world to bring this downstream processing onshore. And so we can't just go along and pick up that technology and drop it into an Australian setting. So there needs to be technology advancements in the processing to create energy efficiencies, to minimise waste and to really improve the ESG commitments for downstream OEM providers, which then can provide to the end user that commitment. And so the opportunity, so at the moment, you know, you would have heard of Australia, the US, Europe having these large grants, funds created to encourage the West to develop these downstream processing technologies. And so the strategy of ACDC, the mine to magnet, and so this is, I guess, our pictorial where we really looked to outline exactly what we're about. So this is the first part, which is the resource side of things, the mining side of things. So at the moment we have our mineral sand tenements in Western Victoria. And so that would be, the vision there would be producing a building a process plant there, which would be physical separation. So that would produce the standard HM heavy mineral concentrate that has always been. There's well-established markets, so that's your zircons, your titanias, which go into ceramics and paint pigment markets. And then monazite is really the key differentiator that's come out in the last few years. So monazite is part of that whole energy transition. 5 years ago, that was only worth $500-600 a tonne. It's now worth between $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a tonne, because everyone's trying to get that monazite because it contains 60% rare earths. And so at the moment, a lot of the countries around the world will produce that rare earth concentrate, that monazite, and then sell that to China. And so the opportunity is then to drop in the next stage, and that's where I guess ACDC is then saying, we'll come along and build a second plant or a project that will then take that carbonate and do the first stage of separation. And then I guess when we've been talking to the various departments in Victoria and South Australia, once someone like us come along and do that first step, then the next steps will follow. And that's the magnets. And that's the part that everyone wants to get to. The sort of sexy end is manufacturing magnets. But you've got to get through those steps to be able to get there. So mineral sands, yeah. So they're rich in heavy minerals and rare earths. And that's always been a known fact. So in the Western Victoria, the Murray Basin, Rio Tinto, or CRA back then, drilled, did extensive drilling through there where they were only looking for heavy minerals. But the monazite was there, they knew it was there, but it wasn't considered a product then. It was always considered a waste product. But obviously now with this transition and the desire for those metals, it's become something of need. And so these are our key projects. So I won't go too far into the whole resource drilling side of things. I'll focus on the tech. But I guess the main sort of thing here is this 6 months we've just spent drilling a lot there. All our results are coming out of the labs at the moment, and we're working towards our maiden JORC resource in the next quarter. So that's really the sort of key takeaway from that side of things. So just to give a quick sort of background of mineral sands. So there's zircon, titania, and then the monazite and the xenotime. So the monazite and the xenotime, they're the ones that contain the rare earth metals. And so you can see on the little graph there that it's had a real spike jumping up, and that's what's sort of encouraging the people to develop these downstream processing. And they're the four of focus. So they're the ones that are really into the required for the magnets. Terbium and dysprosium, their main requirement is they get added to the magnet to help its heat resistance, and so you don't demagnetise. And so they're expensive, big revenue makers, those elements. So our technology. So the technology is based on Medallion Resources, so a Canadian company listed on the TSX. So ACDC went into an exclusive agreement with them for the use of it within Australia, or Eastern Australia. And so essentially they've taken the well-known process of the caustic crack process, which has been used. It was used in La Rochelle in France in the 70s, Mountain Pass in California in the 80s, 90s, and then it was all then stopped, and then the technology all went to China. And so the development and the progress is all sort of held there, and they don't have the same sort of environmental barriers that we need to jump through to get there. And so that's been the real technical work that's happened over the last 6 years. So they've been doing a lot of work in Saskatchewan Research Council, which is the equivalent of ANSTO here in Australia. And so the main advancements have really been running a continuous process which enables the energy efficiency. So a lot of the recoveries of heat recovery to reduce that energy consumption, maximise reagent consumption, and really reduce that waste efficiency. So the main one with the waste is the phosphate can come off as a fertiliser and sell as a local product, and then you're really minimising that waste stream down to a really small number. And so the benefits of this technology, obviously going into continuous operation, you can minimise the number of operators, the exposure to that harsh environment, and then the efficiencies in reagents and technology, electricity consumption. And then this really is the big positive, the ESG point of view. So that sort of helps the whole, when you're looking at talking to say a Siemens type where they're at the end, they can then work through the whole value chain of how they got to that point. And so that real ESG is a real big factor. And also with our Medallion, the process plant, we don't have to feed it from our own tenement in Western Victoria. So we can either feed it our own monazite there, or we can import monazite from anywhere else in the world. So we have that third-party offtake. So if there's other projects further ahead with the mineral sands, and we can use their monazite, so that sort of really delinks that risk for ACDC. So as far as the timeline goes for the REP plant, so we've just finished our drill program in Western Victoria, and at the same time as looking to develop the resource, we grabbed additional 3 tonnes worth of sample to use for met test work. So that 3 tonnes is across about 80 odd holes. So, you know, it's a bit of a painstaking task for the guys on the ground, but that'll be utilised for test work next year with ANSTO. And so that'll be really enabling us to test the real points in the process that need validating, so that we can do our TechKnow economic valuations and to roll into a PFS next year, and then FS the year after that. So at the moment, we're just engaging consultants, environmental and hydromet consultants, to start the process of understanding the roadmap to permitting. So Medallion had previously looked at this in a US setting, and so we just need to make sure that we don't need to do tweaks to the process to accommodate that Australian setting. So we've started that process. We're well advanced on that, and we're targeting a Q4 this year to have a scoping study done for the REP plant. And that will really enable us then to set us up to move forward into the next stage of testing. And then just as a bit of an overview, so for ACDC in the short term, what the real triggers are for the value add, and you know what can make the share price move in the next quarter or so. So a lot of those assay results that I mentioned from the drilling that we've just been completing, they'll be coming out in the next month or two. Our JORC resource, which is really the big one that we're really excited about. That's the one that will enable us to really peg ourselves against our peers, and then be able to sort of have some meaningful conversations, you know, about the valuations of the company. And then into Q4 this year will then be the scoping studies for both our mineral sands plant and for the REP plant. So I guess as the key sort of summary takeaways, you know, we've pulled together a strong team, rare earth experience. You know, it's hard to find people that have gone through and done a lot of this development and understand the test work and the technical hurdles that you need to get through to get to a point of confidence. Our execution to date, so we've delivered on what we said in our prospectus. We've raised money that will enable us to deliver our plan for 2 years. We're 6 months in and we're remaining on track. We still have plenty of money in the bank, 6 million still in the bank, and you know, everything's being lined up at the moment. So, and our business model, so we provide that great exposure to the energy transition, that critical mineral space. You know, the mine to magnet strategy, it grabs eyes, and it's a good conversation. And the downstream value add for Australia is a big opportunity. So yeah, we're excited to be involved in it. Thank you.